Okay, so you know that feeling right when you start a new job? It's kind of exciting, but there's always a little bit of like, okay, is this going to work out?
Yeah, for sure.
You're making plans, maybe thinking about the future, and then poof, thousands of people in federal jobs suddenly facing firings. It's like, wait, what?
It really is.
Oh,
The
yeah.
thing that really struck me about this whole situation is just the sheer scale of it. You're talking about thousands of people across all these different agencies
Yeah.
and so fast. It wasn't just a few here and there. It was like, boom, a huge wave.
It's not even just a few jobs lost, which is already a big deal. This has become like a legal battle.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy how the executive branch and its own employees are clashing,
Right.
and then you have a federal judge stepping right into the middle of it. You don't see that every day.
Totally. And we're seeing this presidential initiative, you know, the one where they want to reshape how the federal government works and how big it is. It's hitting some major roadblocks legally. People are questioning if they're even allowed to do this and how they're doing it.
All right, so let's break this down. The Trump administration basically wanted to shrink the government, make it smaller, and they went about it by firing a bunch of people. A lot of them were still on probation, like they were new.
Right.
What did that look like on the ground, though?
Well, the firings themselves were really widespread. Thousands of people let go from at least 6 big federal agencies,
Mm-hmm.
like the Department of Defense, Veterans Affairs, Energy, just huge
Right.
departments. And those are just the ones we know about.
Yeah.
It probably affected a lot of other parts of the government, too.
And these were probationary employees, right?
Yeah.
So they hadn't been working there for that long.
Right.
So maybe less job security than someone who's been there for years.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean the government can just fire them without any process.
All right, you got it. That's the really important point. Even during a probationary period, you still have rights. The legal challenges here are all about whether the government followed the rules when they fired these people.
So the administration's reasoning was pretty simple. Make the government leaner, more
Yeah.
efficient, save money, classic kind of argument, right?
Oh, yeah. You hear that all the time when an administration wants to streamline things. But critics of these firings are saying it's actually bad for the government in the long run. You lose skilled people, even if they're newer, they have potential. And what does that kind of instability do to the people who are still working there?
It's a lot of change, too. Like
Oh.
25,000 people fired, and then another 75,000 took buyouts. So we're talking 100,000 people leaving their jobs in a pretty short amount of time. That's like reshaping the entire federal workforce.
It really is. And it's with all of that going on that Judge Alsup steps in.
Judge Alsup. Now, just so everyone knows, he was appointed by President Clinton. It's important to remember that context.
Yeah.
And he made a pretty big decision.
Well,
What did he do?
He ordered those 6 agencies to hire back all the people they fired. It was basically hitting pause on the whole thing.
Wow. And what was his reason for doing that? Why did he feel he had to step in like that?
Yeah. His main concern was with the Office of Personnel Management, or OPM. He felt they were overstepping their boundaries by basically telling agencies to fire all these probationary employees. He's saying that those agencies are the ones who should be making those decisions, not OPM coming in and saying, fire everyone.
And he didn't mince words about it either, right? He called it a sad day and said that poor performance, which was the excuse being used, was likely nonsense. Pretty strong words for a federal judge.
Yeah, definitely. It shows he was really skeptical of the administration's reasons for the firings, and he clearly thought the whole process was messed up. He's basically questioning if it was even legal.
So I'm guessing the White House wasn't thrilled about this. What was their reaction?
Well, the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, said they didn't agree with a single judge stopping the president's plans. They felt like it wasn't right for one judge to have that much power over what the executive branch does with its employees.
And that really gets to the heart of how our government works, right? It's a balance of power between different branches. The president has a lot of authority, but not absolute authority. That's where the Constitution and the courts come in, to make sure everyone stays within the rules.
Exactly. It's all about checks and balances. This case really shows how that tension plays out in real life.
So legally speaking, what were the grounds for challenging these firings? What were the unions and other groups arguing?
Their argument is that this wasn't about each agency looking at employees and deciding who to fire individually. They're saying OPM was the one calling the shots, and that's not how it's supposed to work. That could be against the law, and maybe OPM doesn't even have the authority to do that.
So OPM obviously disagreed. What was their side of the story?
OPM said they didn't actually order anyone to be fired. They claim they just suggested it in a memo. It's a pretty fine distinction.
A suggestion.
Huh.
It's like when your boss suggests something, but, it's not really a suggestion. It's more like an order. Sounds like Judge Alsup saw through it, too.
Yeah, he totally did. He even compared it to a mob boss making a suggestion, meaning it wasn't really a choice at all. He's been in the legal world for a long time, so he knows when someone's trying to pull a fast one.
And then they didn't even let the acting director of OPM testify, which is kind of suspicious.
Right, Charles Ezell, he's the one who would know exactly what happened at OPM and why they did what they did, but they didn't let him talk to the judge, which made the judge even more skeptical.
So what happens now? This ruling from Judge Alsup is big, but it doesn't sound like it's over.
No, not at all. This is just the beginning. It's a temporary pause while everything gets sorted out legally. There are other lawsuits happening too.
Oh, right. You mentioned those.
Hmm.
Who else is fighting these firings?
Well, you've got 20 states, all with Democratic governors. They've filed a lawsuit saying these firings were illegal, and then there's a class action lawsuit from the employees themselves. They want to be compensated for losing their jobs.
So we've got a huge effort to shrink the government, mainly by firing newer employees. A judge stepped in and said, put those people back to work, and questioned if OPM was even allowed to do what they did. And now the White House is pushing back, saying the president has the power to do this. And then we have lawsuits from union states and the employees themselves. It's like a big power struggle.
It really is. It shows that even something that seems like a basic administrative action can have huge consequences legally. It becomes this whole debate about how the government works.
So to wrap this all up, this whole situation has stopped a massive wave of firings, at least for now. But it's raised some big questions. What are the limits of the president's power? What rights do federal employees have, even if they're new? And how do the courts make sure the government is following the law? These are important things to think about.
Definitely. And it makes you think about how the government handles hiring and firing. Are there enough checks and balances in place to make sure everything's fair? Especially when we're talking about so many people losing their jobs.
And beyond the legal stuff, what happens in the long run when you shake up the federal workforce this much? Whether these lawsuits win or lose, it's going to have an impact. We've seen the administration pushing for efficiency, but the people who work for the government, they need some stability. And the courts are there to make sure everyone's following the rules. It's complicated. There are no easy answers.
Yeah, it really is a lot to unpack.
Thanks for joining me today.
My pleasure.
This has been a deep dive into a really fascinating and complex issue. We've only scratched the surface, though. So I encourage you to keep digging deeper yourself. Read more. Listen to different perspectives and form your own conclusions. This is an issue that affects all of us. So stay engaged and stay informed.
And don't forget to subscribe to the show.
See you next time.